And it looks like at this point we have all of our District 1 board members. We have all of our we have all of our District 2 through 5 board members except for Bruce. And then you have myself, Jennifer Ivey, Shelby Clymer, Kevin Collins, Jerry Jacobs, and Brittany Burnett. And then we have Andy M. Andy M. I'm not going to butcher your last name. I'm a member of the public. So I think Bruce was planning on joining Brandon, unless you know differently. So we can wait a minute for him to join if you want.
I do not know differently, so I believe he is joining.
Okay.
And looks like Kelly has joined us as well.
Yep. Yeah, we have. Sorry, I guess I could name all the board members, but we have Sam, Jennifer, Josh, Jason, and Joel from District 1, and Brandon, Chris, and Kelly from Districts 2 through 5, and Eric from Districts 3 through 5. I guess I can start off by saying congratulations to District Number 1. Their bonds did officially close this morning on their refinancing.
Hey,
so
all right.
That is all done and over with. So that is great news.
Yeah, thank you, Jennifer. Thank you for the help through the process.
No, thank you. And I was thanking Sam before you get on. Thank you for being so responsive to your emails and our last minute requests when things come in that we didn't realize hadn't been signed yet. So we appreciate your diligence. And Bruce did just jump on. So we have all the board members from all the boards, all the consultants we were expecting, and one member of the public.
Good afternoon, everybody.
So we have 3 different chairs for these districts. Josh is the chair of District 1. Bruce is the chair of, I think, 3 through some number of them, and Kelly is the chair of at least one of the boards. So I will let you all arm wrestle if you'd like for how you want to convene the meeting, but I can advise you have a quorum of all 5 boards and we can call all 5 meetings to order.
My recommendation to avoid confusion would be to let our attorney kind of lead the conversation and through the agenda and help advise us and ensure that the appropriate people are taking the appropriate actions at the appropriate time for each board, unless anyone else is objecting to that idea.
All right. So
I'd agree with that, Bruce. And then I imagine we open all these meetings at the same time.
yeah, so what I'm going to suggest then, for the avoidance of confusion, is that we start on the District 1 agenda and that we go all the way up to budget. And then when we get to the budget, I'm going to propose that we open the public hearing on all 5 budgets and discuss all the budgets simultaneously. And then we can jump back to the 2 through 5 agendas, being respectful for the residents, board members' time. Of course, they're obviously welcome to stay for all 5 meetings, but in case they don't want to listen to the minutia of all 5 board meetings.
That works for me.
Same.
Right.
Yep.
So hearing no objections and having the meeting passed on to me, I will call to order all 5 boards and declare we have a quorum of all 5 boards present. Item 2 on all of the agendas we can dispense with at this point as well, which is directors matters and disclosure matters. I can report that our office filed disclosures that we have on file for all the directors that have been provided to us with both the Secretary of State and with the board. So unless any board members have additional disclosures they'd like to make at this point, above and beyond what's already included in what we filed, we can move past that item. So I'll just pause 1 second.
I'm here.
All right, seeing no rush to make additional disclosures. Move on to item 3 on all the agendas, which is approval of additions to deletions from the agenda. I don't have any changes to propose to the agenda. We did have a couple of post-packet items that were sent out to the boards, but those were already on the agenda. I guess I would ask Shelby or Kevin if they have any changes to the agenda.
I do not have anything to add.
And then Jerry or Brittany, do you have any changes that you need to make?
No changes from us.
All right, so if any board members have any changes they'd like to propose, please let me know.
Um,
All right. So item 4 then is public comment for matters not on the agenda. So Andy, if you have any public comment that you would like to make as a member of the public, or if any of the board members have any public comment they want to make as per a different board, now would be the time for those matters that are not covered otherwise on the agenda.
No, I just wanted to listen to the meetings. That's it. I have nothing to add to the meeting.
Okay, well, thank you. And if you do have any questions, Andy, as we're going through the agenda, feel free to come off of mute and start yelling, and we'll we will tune in and let you ask your questions.
All right, thank you.
All right, so now going to item 5 on the District 1 only agenda. We have 4 different sets of minutes. We got behind on a couple. You had approved some sort of in the interim. So we have the September 3rd, 2020 special meeting minutes, September 22nd, 2020 special meeting minutes, the October 30th joint study session special meeting minutes, and the October 30th special meeting minutes. You had 2 meetings in that one day because we had the joint study session on the budget and then the bond approval meeting, both on that day. I would be happy to take any revisions, questions, and if there are none, I would take a motion to approve. We can approve them one at a time, or we can approve them all at once. Board's pleasure.
Jennifer, the only question I had was on the September, I think I may have confused myself actually. The September 22nd meeting was not a joint study session, was it?
No, I don't think so. Let me look at my calendar. That's probably the easiest way for me to answer that question. We've had so many meetings lately that it's hard to keep track of them all. No, the September 22nd meeting, it was a joint study session.
The minutes didn't reflect that, but we do have discussion cross boards in there. So that was the only correction that I was gonna offer was, I didn't know if it was important to note it in the top of the meeting minutes.
It is not, and actually, if you look at these October 30th study session minutes, it's consistent. It doesn't indicate that it's a joint meeting there either. We do separate the minutes out since there's different discussion and board members. So it's just really the heading on the agenda that's a bit confusing because it doesn't say joint on the meeting heading.
Okay, no concerns for me then on the minutes. Thanks.
Do we have to motion these separately, or can we make a single motion to adopt all of the minutes?
A single motion works for me.
All right, then I would move that we approve the minutes of September 3rd, 22nd, 30th joint session, and 30th special meeting.
Okay, we have a motion by Sam. Do I have a second?
I'll second. This is Josh.
And second by Josh. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Anyone opposed, please say nay. All right, motion carries. And did admit Greg, a member of the public, in during that discussion item. Greg, we had just passed the public comment for matters not on the agenda, so we'll give you that opportunity as well if you had any public comment for matters not on the agenda.
I do not. Thank you, though.
Great, thank you. Going on to item 6, which is legal matters. Item A is the 2021 annual resolution. I think most of you are familiar with this at this point, but let me just walk through it. This is basically the resolution, I like to say, tells your accountants, your lawyer, and your managers to do their job. This really runs through every single statutory compliance requirement and then sort of parses out who is doing the job and when it needs to be done. This does such things as setting your publication, indicating that legal counsel should keep your contact information up to date, that we need to send out your transparency notice, that your accountants need to prepare a budget per the statutory deadlines by October 15th, that just kind of hitting some of the highlights here, that your audit has to be done on time. It sets your newspaper of general circulation, which is the Colorado Hometown Weekly, for your publications. There are a couple of new items that I did want to point out for this year, which are items 18 and 19. 18 is, it's sort of an authorization of the use of electronic records and ratifying their use in 2020. This is something that's always been statutorily available, but not really that important until we hit COVID and we were all on lockdown. So this just recognizes that the board is authorizing their use and ratifies their use this year so far. And then paragraph 19, also likewise is a sort of COVID motivated paragraph. This indicates that the board can utilize Zoom like we're using today under the statute to meet and ratify sort of all the actions taken this year that were done at Zoom meetings. This is really an overly precautious item, but us lawyers, we get paid to be overly precautious. So we like to make sure that this is all spelled out in your annual resolution. And then while we're on that page, I'd also note that just above that on paragraph 15, we have not taken the liberty of assuming who you want to elect as your officers. Your current officers, Josh is president, Sam is secretary, Jennifer is treasurer, and Joel and Jason are both assistant secretaries. So we would be happy to insert the same, or if you want to switch things up, that's why we've left it blank, is for your input there. I think I've hit most of the highlights. Again, I'm happy to take any questions on your annual resolution, but these are similar to what you've seen in past years, so I also don't want to belabor the point.
Thanks, Jennifer. One question, I had a question for you and then just a remark for the board. Are there any differences in the annual resolutions between the boards other than the districts? Excuse me, between the districts? I didn't notice any, but I just wanted to find out.
That's a great question. Other than the board members, the names of the districts, obviously, and then no, there wouldn't be, because the other one that could have been different would have been paragraph 10, which is the posting location, but tract H is actually located in all 5 districts, and that's the tract that we're using for your quote unquote official posting place. And we do authorize, and we also list the town's location, which is required by your service plan.
Wonderful. Yeah, and then for the board, this does establish the meeting date for next year's regularly scheduled meeting, November 3rd, 2021. I know it's a long ways out there, but just want to make sure that was.
Yes, thank you. I skipped over that in the excitement of knowing that there was a new provision coming up. But yeah, the board has historically met on, for whatever reason, the 3rd of November. So I did carry that over. And if that doesn't work, obviously, like this year, we can reschedule those dates as we get closer. But the board does need to set at least one annual meeting every year, one regular meeting every year. And so that is the meeting that we designated as the regular meeting.
Thank you, Jennifer. I don't have any questions or other comments on the annual resolution. I'd be happy to continue to serve in the president role, but would open it up to any other board members that would like to nominate or discuss their own officer positions on the board.
I'm good. I just wondered, do we need to make the slate of officers before we pass this resolution so that you can fill in? So we're passing a resolution with those blanks filled in. Is that procedurally need to do it?
Yep. So the motion I'd be looking for would be to approve the annual resolution, and then with a slate of officers, either do that a motion to approve the annual resolution with the same slate of officers or a different slate.
Okay, well then I'll make a motion to approve the resolution with the same slate of officers, unless somebody wants to change something.
I second that motion unless the same.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say yes.
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 Anyone opposed, please say no. All right, motion carries. Item 6B is information only. Unless there's questions, I will not take up your precious time. This is a memo that was put together for another client that talks about Amendment B that passed on November 3rd, which was the repeal of the Gallagher Amendment. I know that some folks had some interest in what the meaning of that was. It doesn't actually affect any of these districts because, well, it doesn't directly affect these districts because all the districts had the ability to adjust for the Gallagher Amendment. The one effect for the districts is that it doesn't have to keep ratcheting up their mill levies to account for the Gallagher adjustment. But again, I just figured since this was prepared for another client, that this client could benefit for it without having to pay for it, and you might be interested in it. So I just included that in your packets for information. So with that, I would move on to item 7, which is financial matters. And Shelby, do you want to discuss the financials for the districts first, or do you just want to go into the budgets?
I am happy to do either. I guess maybe I would suggest that we jump into the budgets unless there's any disagreement with that suggestion from any of the board members. No? Okay.
Hearing no protests, I'm going to mute myself and turn it over to you.
Okay. Sounds good. So boards, we will we'll go over, the District 1 budget pretty quickly, as with Districts 2, 3, and 5. And of course, we'll spend the majority of our time with District 4. So for District 1, I did want to point out that this budget was updated based on the final pricing from last week. So we have updated the numbers here. So looking at page 64 of the packet, this is our property tax summary information page. So again, our assessed valuation here are the preliminary figures. We will receive the final assessed valuations from the county later on this month or early December. The general fund mill levy stays the same at 22.265. This is capped at 20 mills as adjusted for all 5 districts. And then the debt service mill levy, based on the kind of final financing plan, was just under 34 mills. And this is subject to final adjustment based on final assessed valuation received from the county. So looking at our general fund, again, all net property taxes here in District 1 are sent to District 4 to fund the operations and maintenance of the districts. So for 2021, total revenues of about $293,000. That's our property taxes, specific ownership taxes estimated at about, I believe, 7% of the property taxes, and then small amounts of interest income and other income. And then total expenditures of the same $293,000, which includes the 1.5% for treasurer's fees, a small contingency, and then everything else going to District 4.
Shelby, do you remind me what that other revenue is? I don't. For some reason, I'm blanking on what that is.
Yeah, Jason, we typically build in a small amount of other revenue really for contingency purposes. So this would be if the district's specific ownership taxes came in over budget, or interest income for some reason came in much higher than budget, just because then we're kind of sending everything to District 4. So no specific plans here for that $1,000, but really just build it in.
Okay, so that's not an actual 1,000 that's actually accounted for. That's just if we get it, there's where it's at.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. I thought it was a called out specific source. Okay, thank you.
Yep. Next page for District 1 is the debt service fund. Again, we had updated this based on final pricing. So in our estimated 2020 column, you can see the activity from the bond proceeds and the payment going to fund the escrow for their refinancing, as well as the anticipated bond issue costs. This does include the payment for the insurance as well. And then for 2021, again, based on preliminary AV and that mill levy that is subject to final adjustment, looking at total revenues of about $453,000 and total expenditures about $455,000, maintaining about $298,000 in ending fund balance, which is sufficient to cover the required reserve under the 2020 bonds of $278,000. The remaining pages are the summary of significant assumptions. We will be updating these for the 2020 refinancing. So some of the information on this page, as well as the following few pages, will be updated. And then we will add the 2020 debt service maturity schedule and replace that with the 2015 that's currently in here. Any questions on the District 1 budget?
I know this may not be you, Shelby, and I can email out the other Jason and that team, but with that reduction in 20 mils onto the what we're looking at for income right there, do we know what that equates to average homeowner savings? So that way we can communicate that out to them.
Yeah, so typically we would assume maybe an average home value of about 400,000. With the current residential assessment ratio at 7.15%, that would give an assessed valuation of about 28,600. And then at 20 mils, that is about I think did my calculation wrong. Hang on one second. That is about $572. So that, of course, is a rough estimate based on an average of 400,000, but that's kind of the ballpark figure we'd be looking at.
Perfect. No, I much appreciate that. I think one thing that would be really important is if we, as a group of Board 1, now that we have kind of certified and closed that out, is if we kind of alert the members of the community, hey, this is what you can kind of expect coming down the road as we're moving forward. Because I know that's been a very contingent point, is we are one of the most highly taxed districts in Weld County. So I think if we can communicate that in terms that they easily understand, would be much appreciated by our residents.
Yeah, it would be helpful. I think if someone could, because 400,000 is probably fairly low for our neighborhood. And if someone could put together some sort of Excel sheet or something that basically, 450, 550, and just extrapolate it out so that we could look and just see what your home value is going to net you.
Yep, we can absolutely do that. So I will add that as a follow-up item to this meeting and can send that out to the District 1 board members or the entire boards, and you guys can use that.
Thanks,
as a Yep. Let me just write myself a note really quick. Okay. Great. So moving on to the District 2 budget. Again, won't spend a ton of time here. This has not been, there have been no changes to this budget since we initially met back on September 22nd. So to briefly kind of highlight property tax summary page, the preliminary AB for District 2 is about 5.3 million. Same general fund mill levy as District 1 at the 22.265. This district does need to continue to certify the maximum debt service mill levy at 55.663 as adjusted from 50, which is generating property taxes in the amount of about 118,000 for general and about 295,000 for debt service. So looking at our general fund for 2021, looking at revenues of about 125,000, which is our property taxes, again, the specific ownership taxes. And then similar to District 1, we have put in an other revenue of about $1,000, really just for contingency. And then total expenditures about 125,000 as well, with the majority of that being sent to District 4 for G&A and operations and maintenance costs. And then for our debt service fund, 2021 revenues about 469,000. This is our property taxes, specific ownership taxes. We've estimated interest income pretty conservatively based on the current rates and kind of what we've been told to maybe expect over the next 12 months. And then we also have 150,000 in here for system development fees. And this estimate was pulled from the latest cash flow forecast that was done for the outstanding bonds. Total expenditures about 630,000, primarily, which is just the interest due on the bonds. So this does contemplate that the surplus fund would be drawn upon in 2021. And that was also kind of contemplated in the cash flow forecast with these bonds, and was anticipated that those surplus funds would be drawn upon for 2020 and 2021. Capital Projects Fund, this is presented because we had activity in there for 2019, but no activity here for 2020 or 2021. And then again, the following pages are the notes to accompany the budget, and we include the debt service maturity schedule for the 2018 senior bonds. Any questions on District 2? Okay. Moving on to District 3, again, no changes have been made since we met in September. Excuse me. So looking at our property tax summary information, assessed valuation here is about 700,000, generating just under 16,000 for property taxes for the general fund. Similar to District 1 and 2, all net revenues of District 3 are being sent to District 4 for the general and O&M expenditures. Any questions there? And then lastly, before we get to District 4, we have the District 5 budget. I feel like I could have just recorded myself for the presentation of these, but the assessed valuation for District 5 is about 550,000, generating property taxes of just over 12,000, and showing in our general fund all net revenues being sent to District 4. Questions on any of those before we dive into District 4? All right. So at a high level, before we kind of dive in, so we all met on October 30th. And from that conversation, there were a couple kind of follow-up requests. One of which was to basically provide more detail on the expenditure categories. And so that is what I had sent to everybody last night. I apologize that we didn't have that ready for the board packet, but we'll certainly use that to aid in this conversation. And as I mentioned, that email will look for just kind of a general consensus so that we have clear direction on the presentation of both this budget as well as our monthly financial reports as well. So that said, I will pull up that document that I shared. So again, no changes were really made to this document since we met in October. We did refine some of the 2020 estimates, but still expect to be within budget. But again, that supplemental page that I sent out last night is really to help facilitate in the continued conversation of the 2021 expenditures in that discussion. So we'll move this over. Are you able to see this document with the expenditure details?
Only seeing the PDF at the moment.
Okay, the District 4 budget PDF?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Let me redo this then. Okay, I think you guys should be able to see this now. So just kind of general layout. This has all categories of the general fund budget for District 4. We have general and administrative collapsed here. There's really no further detail to add on to the categories that we have in the budget at this time. Again, that's primarily accounting, legal, district management, insurance, dues, that kind of thing. So we did not really expand this because all of that detail is on the budget. We have our district operations and maintenance. And we provided further detail on this other repairs and maintenance line item that includes several different items, many of which were brought up in that conversation on the 30th. So we'll kind of circle back around there. For clubhouse operations, we did the same for the operations and maintenance, and then general repairs, as well as down here with the pool. We added a few more details on the pool operations and maintenance. So coming back up to our district operations and maintenance, again, the overall numbers haven't changed at this point from what was initially presented in October, but wanted to kind of review this additional detail here. So our other repairs and maintenance, Jerry had provided details with, the expected kind of categories under that. So for that $30,000, the items that make that up, we have in there holiday lights, which was one of the questions at our last meeting, to make sure that there's still a budget for that. So that's included here at $12,000. We also have playground equipment maintenance in at $2,000, native area maintenance for $2,500, monument maintenance for $4,000, concrete repairs and landscape repairs both at $2,500, and then fencing repairs at $4,500. So I will stop there briefly and see their questions and discussions specifically on this kind of category or grouping.
Shelby, this is Kelly. I just want to note, just to add a finer point to this, is that some of these were bundled into larger categories, and based on feedback on our last meeting, we broke them back apart. So residents could see, as an example, holiday lights were rolled into another category. So we pulled those back apart and built these extra categories to specifically call the things out that folks were interested in.
Yep. And
oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to ask, so seeing these categories rebroken out, a couple things I want to call out. Since the original budget to today's budget, or this breakdown right here, we're still missing tree replacements and plant material replacements based upon yearly damages and knowing what we've done in past years. What is our plan to deal with those for the upcoming 2021 year for doing tree replacements and plant material replacements in the community?
Yeah, thanks, Jason, and thanks for pointing that out. So all kind of capital in nature items were pulled out, so that these categories we're looking at here are really just for ongoing operations and maintenance and don't include the tree replacements or the landscape enhancements. So I think this is still part of the ongoing discussion here. In addition to pulling them out of operations and maintenance, they have been removed from the budget at this time completely. Just, with kind of funding conversation, we do have, Jerry had gone through a process to kind of put together a phased approach plan for tree replacements and landscape enhancements. So we do have that information that kind of goes along with the conversation of overall funding for these expenditures.
Okay, so they've been, not only are they removed from this budget, they're removed completely because they're capital items, but they're items that we've had to cash in on every year. So, and I guess this isn't mainly for you, Shelby, but for the board members to kind of speak up onto what are our plans to maintain and take care of those issues. Like, as we have dead trees in the community every year from hailstorms, as we have plant replacements, if we're pulling those capital items, what is our plan as board members to keep our community looking decent?
Well, Jared, do you want to go over that phased approach that we had discussed previously?
Yeah, so
I can pull that up, Jerry.
yeah, if you can pull that up, Shelby. So you can see it here. The total capital enhancements was 238. So if you phase it out and you do a portion of the tree replacements in 2021, you do the mulch refresh along Longs Peak and the clubhouse, and the top dress at the park. And then you do 50% of the native overseating. That's what I had targeted in phase 1, which would be 2021. And then the remainder of the improvements in 2022.
Okay. And just to clarify though, this phase 1 2021 is not in the current budget though, correct?
That's correct, Jason.
So we have a
So
plan. We have a
Jason,
plan
hey,
to handle
Jason.
it, but we don't have funds for it. Is that what I'm understanding?
Yeah, so Jason, let's revisit the conversations that we've had in the past.
Uh-huh.
So we were asked to put together a budget and put together a budget with, with the operating and maintenance items and establish what the capital enhancements are. We have done that. We've established another revenue item as $90,000 is what we need to solve for, in addition to this $91,000 here. So the number that we've talked about in the past is $180,000, and identify what other revenue or other opportunities are there to get to that funding.
Okay. Yeah, I just want to make sure it's
the intent would be to fund that in 2021 and provide for that phase 1 that Jerry has laid out there. So
okay.
you've talked about that.
Yep. So I just want to make sure it's clear to the rest of the board members then. So right now we're looking at a negative $181 balance on that budget then, not just the $90,000 that's being looked for in other revenue, but $181,000 at this point in time that would have to be looked in for other revenue to handle tree replacements, mulching. Oh, I'm just making sure it's very clear, Brandon. Yep.
That's what we've talked about in the past. That's what we've identified.
Okay.
I have one question on the covenant control line item back on that last page that you showed. It wasn't a metro district, it was an HOA, but we had a committee of residents that volunteered and were the covenant control inspection committee that took that. And I'm wondering if it would be legal, Jennifer, to set up something like that in our district to alleviate that line item expense and use residents who volunteered to be on that committee. Just looking forward, not next year, but something to think about.
Right, and I guess I would ask Jerry just the covenant for what that line item entails, because I know sometimes these budget line items lump several things together. So to be able to answer your question, I want to understand what exactly is included in that budget line item.
So what's included in that budget line item is all the community management responsibilities, which are the weekly inspections, the covenant enforcement inspections, the landscape escrow completion inspections, and the tracking of all of those actions and the decisions that are made through the design review process, collecting all of those documents on new sales, new closings. So all of those, responsibilities are what are included in the covenant control and inspections. They also do the tracking for all of the violations progressively, and when those hit certain levels and get turned into liens on properties for non-compliance.
Brandon, it might also be helpful to differentiate which of those services are covered by the general fund of the district and which are covered by fees paid by applicants, because I think there's some of that also going on there.
That's correct. So we do process review fees for the initial design review, administrative work, as well as the final inspection.
I think that's true also with the escrow releases. Isn't there a fee that goes along with that?
There is not for the escrow.
Okay, I apologize then.
So to circle back to
what you
answering
described is exactly what they called it, the design review committee at my last residence, and it was done by homeowners that basically did all those things that you described as volunteers. I was actually part of that committee for a while. It's just something to think about to save ourselves $35,000 and use it somewhere else if we wanted to go that way.
Yeah, so to circle back to your question of if you could legally do that, yes, I think you could legally do that. I think it's a big task to take on by a committee, and I'm impressed that a citizens committee took it on. I have one other district that popped in my mind immediately when you said a citizens committee that had a core group of citizens that was able to take on those kind of tasks. And so I think it is a possibility. I'm not sure how practical or feasible it would be, but yeah, it's definitely something that could be explored.
Hey, Jerry, to kind of further that conversation, just so that I'm clear, if of the total budget that MSI has, can you break that down just roughly into, covenant control inspections versus the applications that are going on? Just because I think for Sam's question to be relevant, it's important to understand how many of those dollars are potentially there to be saved, and then, more thought can be put into whether that's something that the board wants to do in the future.
So the review fees are $125 per closing. So you would have to back that out.
Your covenant control is a certain dollar amount per home that's in the community. So you should be able to take that dollar amount, whatever it is, $35 times the number of closed homes, and approximate the proportion, apologize, Sam, of those funds that are associated with the covenant control component. I mean, I live in an HOA that also does that. It creates a lot of conflict because the people that tend to volunteer, at least in my community, for that covenant enforcement, it's just sometimes they're not altogether reasonable. But in any event, our HOA has made that decision, and certainly these districts have the authority to do it. But I think the key is to understand what the dollar value is and whether that's something that the community finds is a worthwhile endeavor.
Yeah, so the community management piece of that is the $425 a unit. So you'd be looking at that piece of it. That component would be $25,000 out of that $35,000.
Okay, and then you'd probably spend some component of that on legal or district manager work to cover the processing portion, separate and apart from from the actual inspections, et cetera.
Yeah, and you also have to factor in software costs on tracking the and processing the design review applications, keeping those on file as you're required to do. And then the inspections, you have to have some sort of tracking software device or system where you can track violations, whether they be recurring or non-recurring, what they were for, so that you have historical information, so you can follow the proper covenants.
I don't know what we pay for, but I think in the case of the HOA that I'm part of, I think our HOA manager does that, and I'm sure we pay something for it.
Yeah.
Sam, was that your experience?
Yeah, I mean, our chairman of that committee had a software program that he did all the tracking, and he would send out, go inspect this or go look at this. I just received this, and you would, go out and report back. I mean, it was a fairly simple process. I mean, we all had the covenants. We knew what the regulations were. I mean, I'm not the lady with the chainsaw in the commercial cutting down mailbox. But we did some pretty decent enforcement, but we were reasonable. And I guess that just depends on who's on your committee.
Sure.
From committee to committee, but it worked very well, and it was fairly seamless, and we had very little blowback from the residents when I was doing it.
Sure.
I'm just throwing something against the wall to see what sticks. It's just something that I'm looking at, a line item that looks like a fairly large number that maybe we can bring in-house.
Yeah, and Sam, I'm not in my comments objecting at all to your thought process, just trying to put some more parameters around it. And I think as the initial
argumentative, sir.
Sure, and I think as the initial declarant, there's, through build out, there'd be some interest in maintaining control. But, as it is right now, it's a third party doing it anyway. So, I imagine those details could get worked out. But in the long run, right, I mean, Oakwood's not going to be part of, managing and maintaining that. And the boards will be able to make whatever decision they'd like to. So that's a few years down the road, but not very many.
Yeah. And Sam, this is Kelly. The only thing I would add is just, I think, making sure that if we went down that path, right, where it's a citizen-led effort, that the citizens have appropriate support, and there's some basic training we should provide, and then that they're just not thrown into the job, right? That there's some background and support that happens behind the scenes for those that are willing to volunteer, because that is a big task. And I've seen every version of this that you can imagine, but the most successful ones also provide some training and support to those citizens.
Yep, I agree with Kelly. That piece is definitely, we're going to want to have training behind it. We're going to want to have, with it being volunteers, by paying out for this service, we know we're receiving it. We know that it's going to be consistent. We know what we're getting on that side of it. By going the volunteer route, we get whoever decides to jump in for that week, that month, that year, and the turnover on that aspect may be a little bit to manage for district or community our size as well, and how disjointed we are in some groups. So I mean, it's definitely something we can look at as time goes on. I would definitely agree on that piece, Sam. Like I said, maybe not this year, but a year or two down the road as we build out. I agree on that side, but structure behind it, I think it would be key. If we do want to look at it, I think we should have a structure of how we get there and start building that out and laying that out and ensuring that we have all legal processes in place. So the documentation side of it, what do we need to get to, the review, like all those pieces, I think we should have laid out. And then once we know all the parts of the pie to kind of get there, then we can decide, okay, we're ready to make that jump to save. And then that will also help us evaluate, is it actually going to be a savings versus the time and time investment into getting it going, managing the overhead, the people, and the software in place in-house versus having a third party take care of it for us. Just things I'm kind of thinking out. Sorry, just things that were popping in my head when we're thinking about it, but I agree with you on that piece, Sam. Definitely one thing as we keep looking down the line to see if we can control that.
You can keep going, Shelby. I'm done.
All right. Well, good discussion.
Yeah, really.
So, I can keep going back down through this. I think, the capital piece and the overall funding piece is something we'll need to circle back around on. But looking at some of the further details, again, within clubhouse operations, we have a line item for clubhouse operations and maintenance at $56,000. So here are kind of the additional details under that. So just kind of general operations and maintenance at $21,000. We have security in here at $5,500. Various work order repairs and maintenance estimated in at $12,000. We have the clubhouse rentals and events at $10,000. And then janitorial or cleaning and supplies in at $7,500. So again,
sorry, go ahead.
Nope, go ahead, Jennifer.
On the clubhouse rentals, what is that on a normal year? What do we normally get for that? Because anticipating that this next year, who knows what that will be like, and if we'll be able to even get to the 10,000, if it can be opened up to be used as it has in the past. Is that a fraction of what it normally is? Is it a reasonable number, I guess is what I'm asking.
Yeah, and I do want to clarify, so this is on the expense side of it. On the revenue side, we do have in a budget of about $3,500 for the rental fees coming into the district. So kind of back up what would be maybe more of a normal level, whereas we're estimating only about $1,000 for this year. So for that $10,000 budget, Jerry, maybe you could provide additional clarification on that.
So, yeah, I mean, Jennifer, that number is in there. It's somewhere in between what a normal year would look like and what this year is looking like. Obviously, if COVID doesn't go away and it stays, going back and forth between the forms it's been in the last few months, that, we won't even come close to that number.
Okay, that's what I was wondering. All right, thank you.
Well, and I guess too, so what is, so on the expense side, what is clubhouse rentals and events?
I'm sorry, Jason, I'm not.
On this, so we have an expense for $10,000 for clubhouse rental and events. Like, what is that expense for? Like,
it's for managing all the administrative paperwork, the waivers, the applications, the setup for the events, the tear down for the events, extra cleaning is just all kind of wrapped into that line item.
Okay. Just because I see it on our our previous one, we had it marked as 3,500. So I guess I was trying to figure out how we went from 3,500 for clubhouse events to 10,000 on this one.
So I think what you're looking at is the 3,500 is what the district sponsors for the community events.
Mm-hmm.
And then the 10,000 is the cost of the clubhouse rentals.
Okay. So
it's two different things.
So are we not covering our costs in every time we rent a clubhouse out to when someone rents the clubhouse?
No, not even close.
Maybe that should be what's the difference on that?
So,
do you know? We can take this on later, but I'm just wondering if we should, instead of covering the cost for people on that piece, that the cost of the rental actually truly covers it, so the districts aren't left picking up those fees.
So we had it a couple of years ago. We set it to cover the cost of the rentals, and there was a huge negative response by the vast majority of the residents there. The fees were way too high to rent the clubhouse. They were prohibitive. So we moved them back down to a nominal level so that it was more appealing for residents to actually rent it out.
I would agree with Jerry. The residents went a little bit crazy over the fees, and they were comparing us to Collier, which was significantly less, and as a result, the district lowered the fees to make us competitive, A, with Colliers, and B, to keep the residents from storming the beaches.
Okay, yeah. Jerry, can you remind me what is the price to rent a clubhouse at the moment?
Brittany, are you on still? No, she was having some trouble with internet, but
I can email later too.
I'm here. Sorry, I was on mute. I'm here. It's $150.
150?
No, it's not. I'm sorry. That's the security deposit. It's $75 to rent the clubhouse. The security deposit is $150.
Okay.
I'm just gonna ask the dumb question as a follow-up to that, Jerry. If it's costing us $75 to rent the clubhouse, I'm just trying to figure out how we spend more than $75 doing paperwork for that rental.
So I don't think it's necessarily doing the paperwork. It's
it's the cleaning and the pieces of that piece of it, because I know we've had to get cleaners over there multiple times after people have had their parties, everyone leaving their drinks. I've been experienced to that fun one. You come in and someone left their birthday decorations up and all that fun. So I can see it definitely being that cleaning side of it. But
maybe what we need to do is have a surcharge for cleaning if they leave the facility in a condition where it requires cleaning. Because I agree we should have it be of a reasonable cost for the residents where it's not a burden. But at the same time, the rest of the members of the district shouldn't be paying because somebody else fails to clean up after themselves.
Yep. I agree. Bruce. And maybe instead of 75, we start looking at 150 to kind of offset that. I mean, 150 to rent a clubhouse is still not a bad price, and then have a security deposit on top of that, but just something so it's not as burdensome to the budget. And then once the area starts filling out more, maybe then we can look at adjusting it down. But I in this area, I don't feel like 150 would be too burdensome for a rental. I mean, especially since I've been looking at kids' birthday party once before all this happened, and 75 is super cheap. But yeah, well,
yeah, we can
talk about it later. So that's not. I mean, that's just a item if rentals go up, so it's not a big deal. The other one, the security, is that what we're paying for the cameras right now? For a yearly to the camera system, or what does security entail?
So security is anytime we have to do maintenance on it, or we have to do, camera reconfiguration or replace the cameras, and then the time that it takes to coordinate all of that.
Okay. Yeah, I know we just recently upgraded all that, so it's definitely good to have in place since we were lacking for a while. I didn't know what all that was entailing in it. Okay. I guess the only other kind of questions I have on here, a few things I kind of saw, or for janitorial service, we originally were at 12,000 based upon the contract last year, or increased the number of cleaning days. We're now down to where did it just go? 7,500. did we change cleaning services or cut down our number of cleaning days on that?
We cut down our number of days.
Okay. And then for the grounds maintenance, that was originally at 9,500. Is that still included in this breakdown? I see.
Yes, it is.
Perfect. I do appreciate the repairs being broken out. If I remember correctly, weren't we talking about one of the pumps was needing to be replaced in this upcoming year?
One of the pumps?
Yeah, if I remember correctly, I remember that being popping in my head from when near shutdown time or before shutdown time, we were talking about a pump having to be replaced, or there was something wrong happening with one of the pumps. Can you remind me of that? Is that, or is that just making things up, Jerry?
No, I'm not aware of a pump needing to be replaced.
Okay, no problem. I've somehow a pump and replacement and repair jumped in my head as something that needs to be done soon.
Okay, Shelby.
Sorry, I muted myself. So the next section here is for the pool facility. Really here for the pool operations and maintenance, a budget of $30,000. This wasn't expanded too much, but did specifically pull out the pool scheduling at $1,500 and pool signage at $500.
I have a question on that for the lifeguards. That's a pretty hefty number. And I know the first year we were here, there weren't lifeguards at all. Is there any way we can work that number to maybe lessen and get back to where it just seems like it's a big number. And again, I've been here when we didn't even have them at all. And are we also pool scheduling? Are we anticipating keeping the same thing as this past year?
So as far as scheduling goes, we are anticipating keeping this schedule as we have proposed it in years past, which is basically Memorial Day to Labor Day with an extension through September, weather permitting.
I thought you meant scheduling like online where you had to make an appointment and whatnot.
Oh yeah. So okay. The feedback we got from the residents is they really, really liked the scheduling system. And we've been asked if we could keep it. So that's why we've got this number in the budget.
Okay.
What if there's no COVID? Would we still keep it?
I think what we would do if there's no COVID is we would survey the community and see if they still wanted to use the reservation system at that cost. And if not, then we would drop that cost off.
Okay. Makes sense.
Don't mean to go back to the lifeguards. Is there any way to get that number down?
Not that I know of. I mean, that's a pretty good number as far as lifeguarding goes in that area. Just because you're just far enough out of Denver that there's very few Denver lifeguard companies that will come up that far, and they won't do it at that cost. I know we also discussed no lifeguards. So I guess that's always a discussion that we can have again as well.
Yeah, and Jerry also mentioned we had this conversation in the past, you and I guess, in terms of unintended consequences of not having lifeguards and extra costs that may be incurred due to repairs and those type of events. So maybe speak to that a little bit too.
Sure. So I mean, if you were to look at this and say, let's make a decision and cut out lifeguards, save $55,000, you would also have to factor in the additional repairs and maintenance that would cause, because there is no oversight at the facility, as well as vandalism as well, because the lifeguards, serve as staffing in the season. So they have people there, for the hours that they are operating. So you can't just look at it as a $55,000 savings if you cut lifeguards. You have to factor in the damage to the facility that's going to happen from vandalism and the additional repairs and items like that that are really hard to quantify.
Okay. Is it possible, and again, I'm not saying let's definitely get rid of the lifeguards, I'm just trying to throw some ideas out there, because one of the neighborhoods we lived in, run by the HOA, obviously. They didn't have lifeguards, but they had somebody that would sit at the gate at the front and would check for each to make sure they were homeowners, but it also they were there for oversight to make sure there was no vandalism or nobody was, drinking excessively or whatnot that you shouldn't be doing at the pool. And I don't know if that would even cut the cost because it was just, they hired just whoever, somebody that was appropriate for the job, and it just worked that way. And I don't know if that would even save any money at all, or if that would be an option.
Another concern, just while we're on it, I would be interested to know if there would be an increase in the district's insurance premium because of additional liability. I don't know. I know in that first year there wasn't as many, I'm sure, wasn't lifeguards at all, but I would be interested to hear from the SDA pool if they would increase our liability rating and somehow increase our premium because of that. And I don't know the answer. I'm really just asking the question because all the communities, all the special districts that have community pools that are under their insurance coverage have lifeguards that I work with. So I don't have a basis for comparison that I can pull up.
We can find that out, Jennifer.
Just my personal opinion. I don't think I would be associated with a district that didn't have lifeguards. I think there's too much risk, both on the cost side and the liability side. And ultimately, it's about making sure that our residents are safe. That's just my opinion.
I agree with you.
And I just did some quick math, guys. If you were, let's say you had 2 to 3 staff people and you had them staggered staffs and you pay them appropriately, you're still over 40 grand at least. So, and you're still not eliminating then the liability side that Bruce just referenced. So, it's a cost benefit analysis, kind of risk analysis that you all have to think about in making those kinds of decisions.
I agree with Bruce and Kelly on this about, I think if we think back to the first year of the pool, it was a little bit of a free for all and we definitely had damage and it was a little bit uncontrolled. I guess my only question, Jerry, was whether or not this is 3 lifeguards or 2, because it felt pretty excessive to have 3 lifeguards with only 50 people allowed in the pool this year. And if this assumes 2 or 3.
This assumes 3.
Yeah, that's the one area I would like to consider is that it didn't make sense, the ratio to me this year.
And Jerry, I know that there's coverage requirements. My kids were both lifeguards where there's a certain number of hours on, a certain number of hours off and all of that sort of stuff. Is that what's pushing for the 3 requirement? Because I agree that if you've got many fewer people in the pool facility, it seems like that could be reduced, but I know there's some criteria around it.
Yeah, there is. I would have to look at it. I don't have the contract in front of me, but there is that criteria.
Do you want me to speak to that really quick?
Sure.
So it's 1 lifeguard per 25 people in the pool. And they are on shifts every, I think, 45 minutes. So 1 guard gets like a 10-minute break and then 2 other guards are out. Plus we have someone checking people in right now because of COVID. So that was going on all season.
Any other discussion specific on the lifeguards or the pool facility? One question before go ahead.
I was just, you talked about the extra money for the scheduler because of COVID. What are the $30,000 for COVID-19 expenses? Is that just cleaning and sanitizing stuff, or what is in that number?
Basically anything that we can attribute and prove that is a direct expense caused by COVID, we can apply for relief funds and get those applied to repay those direct expenses. So we track all of that stuff very specifically.
Okay, so there should be a counterbalancing income.
There is, yeah.
Okay.
There's a revenue line item that offsets it.
Okay, perfect. Thanks. I didn't see that.
Yep. So one question for the group before I go back to the actual budget document. Again, I just want to make sure that we're all on the same page with these additional kind of groupings or categories. We can certainly, if this is sufficient, we can certainly update the budget document prior to finalizing with this, but wanted to get any feedback if there's additional details that we need to look at, or if this feels kind of adequate or sufficient.
I mean, I know I was one of the ones that asked for that breakdown, so I appreciate this. I like it very much. I think it allows for that deeper look, and that year-to-year understanding of that piece. The only thing I would kind of say in there is if there's anything that's a zero balance, that also kind of continues to show us forward. So things that were on last year's budget that are now moving over to a zero, that those line items still stay continued. But outside of that, I mean, I am much more appreciative of this than the collapsed version.
Okay. Thanks, Jason.
Thanks, Jason.
Is there, I know there was a lot of discussions around this just as we're wrapping up the conversation about the pool. And I don't want to send anybody over a cliff because I'm not proposing anything necessarily, but you know, districts made different decisions last year about opening versus not opening in the COVID realm. You know, this district chose to open and has operated that way. This budget is built around that same set of assumptions. I just would put it out there if anyone has comments or wants to discuss that as we're finalizing the budget.
I'll just say from, you know, district management standpoint, the feedback that we got, and Brittany can speak to this as well, it was very positive and very appreciative that we were able to open the facility.
I mean, I know residents really did enjoy the pool side of it. Having that basically that escape was much appreciated here in the community. I also understand where you're coming from, Bruce, on that side. I mean, we're facing $180,000 in deficit right now. And we got to find some way to make that up as well. So, I mean, we're got to look at a twofold of, yes, it is something that the community enjoys, it's something they use, but knowing that we're 180 grand short on what's needed to maintain the district, it may have to be something that we do look at.
Yeah, I'm not necessarily proposing that we close. I'm just interested in the overall conversation because I think it would be, let's just say, I don't think it would be right to make that decision strictly on budgetary lines, but rather whether it's the right thing for the district to do, you know, safety-wise, the service we're providing to the residents combined with the budget.
I know if we go look at the usage data, you can actually see, and I think that's in Jerry's report when I was scrolling through things coming in throughout the night, that we have how much the pool was being used, and it actually does show that we are having those bookings quite a bit, especially with that new online system. Am I misspeaking there, Jerry?
No, that's correct. I mean, there was a lot of days that we were at max capacity.
I think that's actually the number one complaint was things were not enough room in the pool for people, but due to COVID-19 restrictions, that's kind of what we were stuck with.
Yep.
And I will tell you that having managed some of these across other districts, right, the pool size and configuration had a huge effect on the ability to open pools or not, right? You'd run a calculation, and we ran into that in Reunion where we just couldn't make it work, right, financially. So Bruce, to your point, I mean, I think God knows where the restrictions may or may not go as we head into this next year and what the spring and early summer looks like. But my advice is we'll just need to remain nimble and over communicate, not just internally, but with the residents to arrive at the right decision.
Kelly, can you share that calculation and like how that came to by chance, or can you look it up and then email it out to us? Just so we got it
I'll have to look
up.
it up, but
yeah.
we just did a calculation based on the available square footage of the pool, functional pool space, to arrive at how many people you could put in a pool in any one time.
Okay, yeah, that'd be really kind of nice to see, just so we can have it in the back of our minds as we do move forward and we see how.
Now, you guys were in a different county than us, so those rules would not have applied to you.
Okay.
Under this current year's COVID rules.
No problem, the rules wouldn't have applied, but the mathematics has an impact on whether it's a good idea or not, right?
Yep.
Correct.
Yep. Same
I'll
thought
go
there,
back
Bruce.
and look at that, how we did that.
Okay, that'd be much appreciated, sir.
All right. So we will move forward with updating the budget document for the columns presented for these expanded kind of details. So coming back to the overall budget, I think circling back around to this other income line item we have in here at about 91,000, and then the discussion on kind of the landscape enhancement. So I don't know, Brandon or Bruce, if either one of you want to kind of speak to this. I guess before I turn it over, just a reminder to everybody, the districts do have a capped general fund mill levy at 20 mills. So there's really nothing we can do from a property tax standpoint for 2021. And then in order for the districts to impose like an operations and maintenance fee to the residents, we would also need to go through a process to present that to the town and receive approval from them. So with taxes and fees, the options for 2021, I believe, are pretty limited. So that said, I'm kind of open it up for further discussion.
So Shelby, I'll just note that, what we committed to, I guess, in 2021 is to understand, what the options are, when we can pursue those, and get some third-party analysis to take a look at what the stabilized numbers would be in terms of either mill levy or fee. Have that conversation with the boards, understand what the options are out there, and pursue a path.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's our next steps. That's the intent. I guess into 2021 to identify how do we get there of funding another $180,000.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And Brandon, to add on to that, and I think that I mentioned this at the October meeting, and I think it was right at the end, so we didn't have a lot of time to discuss, but we have, CLA has done some work to kind of put together projections on what that looks like from an O&M standpoint for the districts to be self-sufficient. And the work that we've done shows that there would need to be either a mill levy increase or an operations and maintenance fee. And in looking at the scenario for an O&M fee, that was looking to be kind of right around $50 a month at full build out, kind of based on the expenditures that we had for this budget and past year's budget, to get to a stabilization point.
So I guess, can I ask the question then, how do we get to this point based upon when the districts were formed, that O&M fee was set out based upon what the expected build out was going to be? How do we get to the point now where additional fee is needed and the 22 mills is not sufficient not to meet that based upon when the districts were originally set up? Like where did we start having course correct, or not have course correction to bring us back to be stabilized in that amount?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and Jason, I don't really have the background knowledge of kind of when the districts were formed, and so potentially Jennifer or the Oakwood team, or even Kevin, if he's still on the phone. We had done, I think it was back in 2017, once the amenities were at the point of kind of, the districts were opening those amenities. We had done the work at that point. So, it's kind of been a part of the conversation for the last few years. And I believe at the point in 2017, when that was brought up, the decision was made, not to pursue the fee at that time. But it's, again, kind of been a part of the ongoing discussions for the last several years. So, I would open it up to anybody else that has any further kind of background information on bridging the gap between kind of formation date and where we are here today.
I can just give you some formation background. When the districts were formed, it was actually quite the feat that we were able to get the town of Erie to agree to the 50 mills for debt service and then an additional 20 mills for operations and maintenance. So there was really no more capacity to push that politically with the town. In fact, we had to get the town to amend their code in order to even allow our service plan to be approved with those mill levy rates in it, under the justification that the O&M mill levy was appropriate because there wasn't going to be a separate HOA charging a separate fee. So from a political standpoint, there was no capacity to ask the town to approve any further mill levy. I don't recall, and maybe Kevin has a better recollection, but I don't recall there being a lot of consideration at that time of requesting an additional O&M fee. But from a political standpoint, I think that probably also would have been a non-starter at that point. The town was pretty rigid in sticking with their model service plan, which required that any fees come back to the town for consideration at the time they were needed. So that's what, from a formation standpoint, that's what I can report historically.
Okay. And then I guess one thing too, and then I guess Brandon and Kelly, you can kind of go into more detail on this. I know I've asked this question before, but can you go into objectively how you define $200,000 for the developer advance? I know you say we're using Collar Hills as our guide or our rule right there on that side of it and how much they contribute for their lots. But I'm just wondering, how objectively are you using that versus, hey, they're also getting 2 pools, their amenities that they have, those pieces where we're not kind of getting that side set of it. So that 200,000, you can go into basically what you turned over into the districts, how you see that we're only 45% built out, and how that you feel that 200 on that developer advance is what Oakwood kind of needs to keep these districts up and running on that piece, and what math you did to get there.
Well, Jason, as we mentioned before, we took a look at Colliers and we looked at the builder fees that they implement on a per lot basis. That was a comparable point. We looked at the percent built out. We felt that was reasonable at this point in time, and we identify those other revenues as something that we need to strive to see how do we get there. So that's the basis of how we arrived at at the recommended developer advance at this point in time.
Okay, are you guys able to share that math by chance of how you did that, how you got to that 200,000 to the rest of the board, or is that something you guys?
Yeah, I mean, we looked at Colliers Hills at per year fee of $41.60 per lot. That was just one comparable point. And that's a calculation based on the number of lots, and that's just one comparison.
Okay. All right, and so you're using them kind of on that side set of it, and then overall, when district communities are being built out, what total cost of ownership plan are you guys using as part of Board 4 to make sure that we're able to afford that? I mean, we're not at the moment, but moving forward, what are you putting in for total cost of ownerships as you assume things from Oakwood into the districts, as things are being built out, as you're also the builder? What are you kind of assuming on that side? So, hey, I'm not even sure what's coming down the pipe, but as the District 3 and 4 build out and you have amenities built out for that piece of it, what do you have for total cost of ownership understanding of that side of it?
Just to be clear, I don't think there's any additional amenities programmed outside of the landscape facilities that are required to go in by the city.
Okay. Well, even for the landscaping piece of it, knowing that we're not completely built out on that side, but understanding, hey, if we put this amenity out or this landscaping regulation out there, the group's only 45, 55, 65% built out. How do you guys understand what the ownership and the cost of that's going to be to maintain for the builder side versus the metro side on that advance? Or are you just assuming that the district will always maintain that? Or have it from the day you turned over, basically?
I'm not quite sure. I mean, are you looking for a takeoff of all the additional trails that we're going to be putting in? Is that the question? Is this landscaping tracks and?
Yeah, I'm just trying to understand. I mean, we're coming $200,000, and I think knowing that we're 180 short, knowing that things have been continually kind of kicked down the road as far as maintenance as where it's been for the last 3 years, that number kind of is going to keep growing, that instead of having numbers that are being used of 41 per lot, this or that, as items are being taken over by the district, that there's actually a sliding scale associated with, hey, we're only 45% built out. This is going to cost $25,000 a year to maintain based on current projections. Oakwood will maintain X amount, and the districts will maintain this amount based upon our build out. Like, why are we not going down that path and actually having a truly set plan of, hey, this is where the funding will come from, instead of coming to 2021 and being $180,000 short for what needs to happen?
Well, I think that's the goal of what we're trying to get to in terms of identifying what the stabilized operations is on an ongoing basis. And Shelby mentioned that earlier, you know, her analysis of the stabilized operation of current expenditures. You know, we can dig into that further in terms of what that means. I don't have any, you know, specific takeoffs of the remaining trails to be put in place at this point in time to provide you an answer at this
Okay.
juncture.
Well, like I said, do you guys, or as the builders, do you have a set goal of what our plans are for trails, sidewalks, things like that, and when we're expected to kind of take those over, so we do know what to plan for as future time goes on?
Yeah, I think it's dependent upon the, you know, the filings that we get approved, I guess, through the town, and when they get approved and when they get built. And yes, we do have plans to build out the rest of the community.
But Brandon, there is a defined scope of what it takes to complete. I think I would also answer the question with, this is not structured as an HOA. It's a metropolitan district. It's a quasi-governmental entity, and different from HOAs. It's not structured in the way that you suggested, that there's always a very specific alignment between the requirements of unfinished lots and finished lots. It's just not built that way. But on the other side, there's a specific contribution that we've been making, or not that the Oakwood has been making for many years for all of the shortfalls to date. I think what we're really talking about here is trying to drive for a budget that as close as possible matches the available revenue to the needs or requirements of the community. And I think that's just the way it is. I am similarly frustrated to you guys that ultimately the constraints that the town required for the formation of this district were such that whether Oakwood is here or not in the long term, there's going to be a need by the district to ask the town for some changes to accommodate those additional costs. And whether that process starts this year or starts next year or starts the year after, it's going to have to get addressed. And I think that it needs to. I think each of these districts, as you guys go through the process of refunding and refinancing your debt and gain ground back in terms of requirements for taxes on the debt service side, it would be smart to try to address those issues along the way, so that as you're giving some back, you're reserving what you might need to reserve for the long term. And I think that's just the way it is. So
I wouldn't agree with you on that piece, or disagree with you on that piece, Bruce. Definitely, our whole goal is to be self-sufficient. I think one of the things I, as a resident, kind of have issues with is the fact that we're completely excluded from bringing in those items into community and having them taken over by the district. So knowing what Jennifer shared with us last week, that residents can be on that District 4 board, is there any opposure to having 2 members from District 1 appointed to the District 4 board? That way we can kind of start being a part of that process, understanding it, knowing, hey, that getting more of a plan of where we need to be long term and kind of getting those finances under control.
So I'm trying to understand what your specific goal is. If the specific goal is for the districts not to take over improvements as they are,
it's not to take them over.
Completed.
Is to take them over and have a set goal of, hey, as we take this over, this is where the funding will be. So as we take over items, there is a direct line to how that item will be funded. And then being a part of that conversation as it's happening.
I guess I'm pausing because I'm trying to make sure I understand what you're saying. As it stands right now, Oakwood is standing in the gap, right, in this community. And again, I think all we're trying to do is balance to a reasonable budget given their resources. I don't think that suggests that it's appropriate to stop the development of the community as it's always been planned, or defer or prevent the incorporation of the amenities or landscape tracts that belong to the community. I just don't see the same sort of correlation that you do to that.
And I guess where I'm coming from at is we're only 45% built out, but yet we're making up about 65% of this budget, looks like, or more than that. So knowing that we're not fully built, knowing that we have that downfall, knowing that there's going to be more additional items taken over this year, but we don't have a plan for where that funding is coming from, why are we going to continue to put ourselves in that pace? The way I kind of see that we should approach it is, I agree, Oakwood should only be responsible for the bits that they're adding in. They should not be our majority set part of the funding for this community. I fully agree with you on that, Bruce. But what I do think needs to happen is that as, let's say the next trail comes up for to be adopted in, before we adopt that trail, we have a total cost of ownership plan. And based upon how we are populating the community, if we are 65% built out, then you know what? We will take that and we'll run with it at 65%. And then once we continue that build out, it becomes more and more the district's cost versus how much Oakwood will continue to pay for that item. And then basically there is a direct correlation to the amenities and the build outs that you're using to sell in this community versus what the residents are expected to pay for and have a fee for. If the fee is truly needed when we're 100% built out, then that is the case it needs to be. But if we are not completely built out and we're paying for items just so that a builder can continue to sell and have these things to have for marketing purposes, I don't believe that's fair to the residents. And I think there needs to be I don't want to be unfair to the builder. I think there should be a direct correlation of X equals X, Y equals Y, and that scale gets built out and agreed upon. But I don't think it should be we're comparing to Collar Hills and here's 200,000. It should be, we are at this percentage point, this is what we're able to maintain, and this is what you're expected to meet on that side of it. And I think by having residents on that board so we can understand and see what the processes are going through, it will open that up more. Because right now, the residents are completely blocked out from that. The district is continuing to consume and take on more responsibility, but not bring in more revenue.
Jason, for clarification, as of June 30th, there was 473 homes closed, and that represents 55% of the community build out of 868.
Yep, but the taxing for that is not till next year, correct? So it wouldn't be until they were actually at their full build-out tax, not first year tax assessment. And that's the piece that we kind of need to look at too. It's not just that, hey, these were closed, that this is the full taxing year that they were kind of brought into it.
Sure. So I think let me make a couple of generalized statements and then propose a way that we keep this moving forward, because we do need to wrap up this meeting at some point, as well as adopt our budget for next year. And certainly none of these issues are going away, and we're not closing our eyes and pretending that they don't exist. But it is, I understand your thought process that suggests there should be an absolute and direct correlation on a numerical basis between what the district is doing and what the developer is doing. That is not the structure that exists today, and will not likely be the structure that exists until well after, or it's just not the structure that exists today. And that is a request that you can make, but I'm not sure that it's one that the districts can enforce or require, or that the developer is likely to consent to. Having said that, I think the process we've gone through this year of having the resident board members more engaged as a group in this process of budgeting and setting priorities, I think has been beneficial to all involved. And I think that going into the next year's budgeting session, we could probably enhance that process. In fact, we have other districts where we have a more structured way that the various boards engage and interact with each other in the setting priorities and establishing of budgets. And I think we probably make sense through the early part of next year to work on that so that as we come into next year's budget season, we are in better shape than we were this year. I mean, I was the one that flew off the handle a little bit at our first budget meeting because it was obvious that we weren't coordinated, even with the consultants that we had on the team, and that bothers me very much. So that would be my recommendation, that we do that. And I think, Brandon, from what you've been describing as the goal is to really think about how we generate additional revenue, what other decisions we can make during the year to try to benefit the overall budget. But in the end, I think there is going to need to be a consideration of how this district maintains itself in the long term. And I think the sooner that happens, the better for all the residents, and in particular, as you guys are able to lower mill levies in areas as you refinance, which happened in District 1 this year and will happen in subsequent districts in the next couple of years. I think that'll be really a beneficial time for you to address that. In fact, we even have some districts we're involved in where as the districts do that, they actually reserve funds for themselves outside of the standing O&M mill levy, and once they are able to reduce their debt service mill levy so that they can drive and prioritize improvements within their particular portion of the community, and gain more sort of control over that effort going forward, even before the operating side of the district begins to transition control. And I think we'd be open, or I would be, I'll just say on my part, be open to all those discussions.
Okay. And then, Bruce, can I ask you, I know you said, I agree with you, now we're not currently set up to have that hard, fast line of math to say, hey, this is what the consideration for Oakwood owes versus the counties or the district owes. But you also mentioned that you're not looking at, or you don't feel the builder would be open for that. But as District 4, you kind of get to make those rules. And that's kind of why, as the community, we want to be a part of that board and be in there to kind of have those discussions to do that piece. So why should we not be involved to kind of reset those rules? I mean, it's something that keeps the community going. It keeps the community involved. As the builder, you're kind of give yourself that sweetheart deal where you're the board accepting, but you're also the person passing it off. So you're getting all these items to use for your marketing material, but then you're passing all the cost off to the homeowners without having the homeowners involved in that board and understanding what the structure is. So what would be the way to kind of get the community involved to kind of relook in that, to have that done, and to have that agreement between the district and the owners? I mean, right now the builder is the district owner, but without having the community in that piece, why are we going to not? Sorry, I'm getting tongue-tied. Why would we not want to be involved in that piece and to reset those rules and have that clear, defined math of how the income will be?
Sure. So make two comments on that. I think, and I hope that you feel and have seen from the conversations and the way that everyone on this board has operated, an absolute openness to having all the residents on these boards as engaged as they can be in the prioritization and establishing of priorities around the budgets. The idea that, let me just say it this way, the structure was established from the beginning, and changing the rules of that game at this point in time, I don't think makes a lot of sense. Bruce, that's different than saying can't be involved or can't be engaged. And whether it's two people on a board, I don't think you're going to see things that you couldn't or wouldn't see now. I think that the real goal should be around having a better and cooperative effort for doing these processes going forward, whether it's a board seat or whether it's a committee that works farther in advance in that prioritization process.
Bruce, if I can distill what I think Jason is saying is that Oakwood isn't paying their fair share, and they've got the game rigged. He's saying it nicely, but I think that's what he's saying. And we're trying, from his viewpoint, I see him as trying to unrig the game and get Oakwood to pay their fair share of what they're dumping on the district. I'm not sure I agree or disagree with that yet, but I think that's what he's saying. If we can just cut through all the nice words, if I'm speaking out of turn for you, Jason, speak up. But I mean, that's the nub of what we're trying to say.
I definitely won't disagree with you there, Sam. And as someone on District 1 right now, without being a part of, without having hard to find math of how things will be paid for, without having a plan of, hey, we're involved in taking things over, knowing what the process is going to be, kind of helping guiding those conversations, I can personally say I would never approve a mill levy increase or a fee coming into District 1 if we're not fully involved in the process and have a seat at the table to kind of guide that conversation. Like I said, it's a sweetheart deal where you're both the builder making the amenities for selling and also the person accepting it for someone else to pay, to have that long-term pay of it. And I don't want to hold anything against Bruce. I see where you're coming from. I know you guys have to make your bottom line. I know everything has to be done and maintained, but those rules of the games can be modified and changed. And while it may be an uphill battle, it is something that as a resident here, I feel like we need to kind of fight for. Because I can personally tell you, if Oakwood came to me now and said, we need to pay a fee after we haven't been doing it for 4 years here, why? What have you added? What have you brought in? You told me when I signed my closing paperwork, all I was going to have was my taxes. And so I think that's kind of where we need to look at on that piece is, you're saying the game can't be changed, but that's because you're on that board. But as soon as we can start putting residents on that board to help answer these questions, start guiding it, I mean, there's no reason that we take over items at 1 year. I think that was just an agreement between Oakwood and the district at that point in time. But there's, from the paperwork I was glancing through, there's no legal requirement on that piece. So whether it's, hey, we do it at 2 years, or hey, we have the hard-coded math to say this is the sliding fee of we're 65% built out, so districts pay 65%, Oakwood pays their 45%, something along those lines, so that it's hard and fast, not a, well, we're going to use Collier Hills this year to justify 200 grand, and oh, next year we're going to use this other district to justify 130 grand. That's shrinking value. I know we wouldn't need to shrink. I really agree. Oakwood needs to shrink how much they're contributing to these districts. But I think that number should be based upon actual ownership and math, and kind of having that agreed upon value, basically, agreed upon structure. And that's what I think would be what we need to do to drive forward.
I understand what you're saying, Sam. Thanks for cutting through the bullshit for us, so that we understand what we're talking about. I think I would not concur that it is just a sweetheart deal for Oakwood, nor would I concur with the assessment that it's an unreasonable or inappropriate deal. It is quite common in these districts of this type that they get to a point where they're self-funded well before they're 100% built out. And at some point in time, after 100%, or as they get to 100% built out, the fees may go down or the service levels may go up. Oakwood is also, just for everyone's reference, has been and will be for some time the largest taxpayer in this district. And so beyond the cash contributions that the developers make, and the developers also paying substantial amounts of taxes in the district. And I think, as I said before at the last meeting, if we're going to go down that route, the math is more complex than what you've just described, and I'm not suggesting that we would be amenable to it, but it would involve also all of the taxes paid by the developer and maybe 4 years worth of shortfalls on, under collection of revenues from the residents at the same percentages of resident participation over those same years. I don't think that the continual reference to a 45%, and that is the appropriate mix between the parties and the revenues. I just don't think it fully considers the complexity of the situation. And I'm not going to hide behind complexity as a basis for making a decision. I'm just representing that I don't think that it's a fair representation and isn't appropriate, to be honest. So having said all of that, I think as a board, we're open to continuing conversations. I think enhanced cooperation next year, whether it's cooperation as committees or as board members, the effect will be the same. I mean, Oakwood's not going to hand over the control of the operating district in advance of approaching build out, and so what is important, and the commitment that we've made and that we've been following through in each and every one of these meetings is there's no information that's off the table in terms of information that you can have available for part of these discussions. There's no, secret information that only District 4 has available to it, and I can commit that it won't be. And so I think we go into next year and continue working on this. I think my recommendation is we move forward and get these budgets as presented approved, continue to work on the issues going forward. I understand your point of view about deferring or choosing not to approve any changes to revenue resources in advance of some specific outcomes, and I think those will be part of the continuing conversation. But I don't see us resolving that.
My biggest complaint, or my biggest issue with saying approving this budget right now, is the fact that we still have 90,000 in unconfirmed income, knowing that we cannot make, or that even if we want to make changes to District 1's mill levy or having fees, that will not be feasible for 2021 at this moment. So what is our plan to deal with that $9,000 shortfall?
I think we'd be repeating ourselves if we go back to that same question.
Well, I mean, Shelby mentioned that we don't have the ability to address it this year because of needing to go to the board and that our captain are O&M. But that seems to be the constant process that we're getting is, oh, well, work. But the work that would be those two options, to impose a fee or to adjust the mill levy. Are there any other options that I'm not thinking of?
So I would say similar to any large budget like this, there's a effort to manage the budget through the year that may result in reduced expenses. And in the end, there may be a decision to spend some funds or not spend some funds, or Oakwood may make additional contributions. There's more than two solutions to that. I think as it sits today, we don't have a committed solution, but we've got a full year worth of operations next year to work through that.
So Bruce, do you want to call the question?
Sorry, so from a procedural standpoint,
Yep.
we've now had Shelby go through all the budgets.
So we need to do the budget hearing.
Right, so what I actually need to do, what we actually need to do now is, let's start with district number 1 to make it as less confusing as possible for me. We need to open a public hearing on all 5 of these budgets. So if I could have a district 1 board member motion to open a public hearing.
I'll motion.
I'll second.
All in favor, please say aye.
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 All right, and then 2 through 5, we have the same representation on, so if I could get a motion to open the hearing for the 2 through 5 2021 proposed budgets.
So move to open the public hearing,
So
2 through 5.
Kelly, you have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Brandon. All in favor, please say aye.
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 All right, motion carries. So the public hearing on the proposed budgets for districts 1 through 5 for 2021 are open. We do still have 2 members of the public, and obviously all of the board members that are not on a board are members of the public for that purpose of those other boards. So if anybody have any public comment on the proposed budgets, I will start with Andy, one of our members of the public.
Yes, I was looking at 4. I guess that's the one in front of us now. What is the cost of water? Is that utilities? Is that buried in the utility budget?
Yes, we have utilities for under district operations and maintenance.
I mean, it seems like with all the parks we have and everything, the water bill has got to be extremely high, even though it's reclaimed water, I'm sure. But I've seen.
Shelby,
Yeah.
could you confirm where the water is in the expenses? I'm not sure it's in utilities.
What is the amount?
Yeah. So we do have 8,000 here for utilities and then 40,000 down here for clubhouse utilities. Jerry, I'm trying to pull up additional detail here, but do you know off the top of your head?
Yeah, so the water and electric and gas are all wrapped into utilities line items, but the water is significantly higher, or the bulk of those costs in that utilities line item is water.
And Andy, the big park, Clayton Park, is owned by the town of Erie. So the district is not responsible for that.
Right. But you have the two smaller parks, and then you have the strips of land periodically.
Yeah, you have, so we have the streetscape along Longs Peak, Erie Highland, or Erie Parkway, and we have the district has the one park. We have not accepted the second park yet into district ownership.
How about the land on the, I think it's, is it Auburn Drive on one side and the Painted Horse on the other? There's that huge field. Is
No, that's not district property.
Well, that will be sooner or later, won't it?
I'd have to look at a map to see where exactly you're talking about.
No, that'll be the town of Erie open space.
Yeah.
Oh, really? Okay. So that water wouldn't be our responsibility then?
Correct.
Okay.
Great. And if you don't have anything else, then I would open up to Greg Scanlon, if you had any public comment you'd like to make.
Nope, I just wanted to listen in.
Okay, thank you. All right, anybody else, any other public comment?
Yeah, Jennifer.
Andy, thanks for participating today. I appreciate you guys being here.
Yeah, and Jennifer, I'll make some public comment on the District 4 budget. You know, first of all, I want to thank Bruce for joining today and being really candid just in the discussion around the District 4. I think it's been super helpful to kind of understand where Oakwood is in the process and the budget for budget process. So appreciate that. You know, I do want to ask the District 4 board and the representatives from Oakwood to reconsider, you know, whether or not the developer advance that they have in the budget is equitable. To me, when you kind of look at overall, you know, the assessed value being less than 50% complete, when you look at, you know, the significant value of the district improvements that allows, you know, Oakwood to demand a superior price for their product. When you think about the timing of when the pool was developed and how big of a marketing, you know, use that was for the sales offices, and the significant amount of costs that have been deferred from prior budgets. As we've worked with Jerry over the last couple of months working through this budget, a lot of the costs, a lot of the things that he would have liked to have handled in years past, much earlier in the district, have been deferred and continue to be deferred. And I don't think that's any coincidence. I think that deferring those pushes them further to the point where the district is further developed, and it shifts the burden to the residents and takes it away from the district. And I don't think that that's just happenstance. You know, I think you know, the 200,000 in the budget, when I compare that back to what Jerry presented in the original budget in September of $1.8 million, right? I have a really hard time reconciling between the two numbers. Do I think that the developer advance should be 1.8 million? No. Do I think it's $200,000? No, I absolutely don't. I think it's somewhere in the middle. There's a huge gap between those two numbers that I don't think's been fully considered. You know, and I think that the transparency in the process, you know, Bruce, I appreciate your comments and there being no data off limits, but I actually think during the process, there was a fair amount of analysis and data that was off limits. There was a lot of comparison done to Collier's Hill that Jason requested on multiple occasions, even tonight, that we just haven't been able to get our hands on. But to be honest, I don't even think a comparison to Collier's Hill is appropriate. It's, to me, that's why we have a district manager. That's why we pay Timberline very well for their services. And when they put forth a budget that is based on their understanding of our assets and our operations, I really think that we need to look at that and use that as our benchmark. I don't think comparing to another district that isn't comparable to ours is appropriate. I think the pace of development is obviously slower than I think the developer would like when they planned the districts, and I think that's contributing to this. But I think that also has got to be taken into account on the Oakwood side, that because the pace of development's been slower, the developer advances are going to be higher than you would probably anticipated. I'm with Jason that the other revenue to me doesn't sit well in the budget. I don't think that there's any way to really deal with that. I think that, it's really just a workaround to this budget that I don't necessarily think is appropriate to include in there. I think Jason kind of summed up a lot of things in there. I'm with Jason. I will consider a fee increase to the district if that's what the numbers ultimately tell us when we get to full build out. The problem I have is that there's so much deferred maintenance from prior years that hasn't been appropriately handled that I couldn't support a fee increase until that's been appropriately reconciled, until Oakwood's contributed an equitable amount to those numbers. I mean, Jerry's repeatedly spoken about tree replacements. Those trees didn't all die this year. They've been dead for 3 years in some places. And the District 4 board just kind of continued to kick it. And the phased approach, by not including anything in, we have a phased approach, but it's not included in the budget. That feels very similar to prior years to me. So anyway, I would like Oakwood to reconsider whether or not they feel like the developer advance is equitable and consider revising that number. That's all for my public comment.
Any other?
Well, Josh stole most of my thunder, and I want to go on the record as saying I was not the first one to cuss on this call. Just for whatever that's worth. But I think that what he said really nails it. We went from
Just for the record,
1.8.
was I the first, Sam? Did I do
Yeah,
it
I
first?
think so.
Oh,
You
maybe
might
I just
have
thought that you were. I apologize.
I was just a little more diplomatic, but the thoughts were identical. In any case, we went from 1.8 to 0.2, and there's got to be some middle ground there that we can find that I think will alleviate a lot of these problems. No one's going to put a fee out there right now. It's just not going to happen. The mill rate ain't going up after we just went through this dramatic, refinancing to save everyone money. I think Oakwood's got to step up to the plate. How they do it, what they give, but that's where the money's going to have to come from unless we can set up our own printing press somewhere and start making it.
I do just want to make a quick clarification in that initial budget, the 1.8 that's being referenced. 1 million of that was in that budget kind of as a placeholder for any capital outlay that the developer has constructed that may have been kind of submitted for acceptance. So that 1 million was not related to kind of paying for current expenditures. So I just wanted to clarify for purposes of this discussion.
That still leaves us with $600,000 so between that 800 and the 200 that's been proposed by the developer. And I mean, that's kind of, I think, where a lot of people are really concerned at, knowing that so much has been kicked down the road, knowing that the build out has been slow, knowing that we have been excluded from processes that, hey, it's something that needs to be addressed and needs to be looked at.
All right, any other members of the public want to make any comments on any of the district budgets?
I'm sorry, this is Joel. I'm just going to go ahead and throw it in there that I'm on board with the rest of the District 1 members here that we got to find the difference. I'm not going to support any sort of fee increase or mill levy increase on the residents after we've refinanced and then just immediately take those savings away. And so I'm just on board with everything Jason, Sam, and Josh have said.
Great.
Should we make a motion to approve the District 1 budget as presented.
Well, first, we're going to make a motion to close the public hearings.
Okay, so moved.
All right. So I have a District 1 motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
And a second by Josh. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? All right, if I could have a District 2 through 5 motion to close the public hearings.
I move to close the public hearing for districts 2 through 5.
Thank you.
I'll second that.
And Brandon seconds. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Great. Anyone opposed? Okay. All right. So
Sorry, I was on
now
mute. I said aye, Jennifer.
that's okay. I saw your lips moving, but I didn't see hear any noise. So jumping back to the District 1 agenda, now it would be appropriate to make a motion to approve the District 1 budget.
All right, I move to approve the District 1 budget as presented.
I second it.
All right. So when you're making that motion, what I hear you saying is you're making a motion to approve the budget, certify the mill levies, and appropriate the sums of money. Those are the three
that's
parts
what I said.
okay. Those are the three parts that come with approving a budget. So I just want to make sure. And all in favor, please say aye.
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 All right. Motion carries. So Shelby, that takes us back to items A and B, which are the September 30th financial statements and then the auditor engagement letter.
I guess I would ask the boards at this time, we're close to 6 o'clock. The September 30 financial statements were included in the packet for District 1 as well as 2 and 4. Do we want to spend time to review these? Or if there are questions, anybody's, definitely able to follow up with me separately. So would ask kind of what the board's preference is at this point.
Now everybody's shy and doesn't want to talk.
I'll speak for myself that I don't have any particular reason to review them together. I've reviewed them separately, and I can get with Shelby if I have any questions.
I've also reviewed the materials and don't have comments or questions regarding them.
Okay. So then maybe I would suggest that we kind of skip over the financial statements. Jennifer, I don't know within the minutes if we would note that or if we would still need to ask for an acceptance of those.
Yeah, I think it's still appropriate. I mean, we have board members who have obviously noted they've reviewed them. I think everyone on these boards are very diligent. So I would just suggest that districts 1, 2, and 4 accept those. That doesn't mean that you're approving them. It just means that you've received them and you're accepting those financial statements. So if I could get a District 1 motion.
Yeah, I'll motion that I've accepted to accept the financial statements as of September 30th.
I'll make the motion for 2 through 5.
All right, can I have a second for District 1?
I'll second.
You guys are challenging my multitasking skills here. A second for Districts 2 and 4.
I will second.
All right. All in favor as a group, please say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? All right, all districts motions pass.
Okay.
And that takes us to the audit engagement, which I'm going to guess you're going to tell me is going to be 1, 2, and 4 again.
Yes, we will have an audit for districts 1, 2, and 4. We have the engagement letter from Dazio and Associates. Steve has been doing these audits for the last several years. And I do believe he did list his fees in these engagement letters. Oops, sorry, wrong buttons here. I do believe that he put in at about $100 increase for each of the 3 for inflationary increases.
Yeah, it's fees $4,900, which I do believe is a $100 increase.
Yeah.
And just a question that we a lot of times get from boards, if there's any benefit in changing auditors. The auditors are meant to be completely separate from Clifton Larson Allen. So there's really not a benefit to changing auditors year over year, especially because a lot of times bringing a new auditor will require a higher fee because they're not familiar with the district's financials. So just to answer that question before it might be asked. So with that, if there's not any questions that I haven't already tried to answer, I would take a motion from District 1 to approve the engagement.
Want to double check because everything's here.
Sorry. I'll motion. This is Josh.
Josh, do I have a second?
I'll
Yeah,
second.
I'll second it.
I have a second from Jason. Districts 2 and 4,
Yeah, so moved.
and a second,
Second.
and second by
Second.
Kelly. Great. All in favor? Well, let's take everyone together again. Please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right, motions carry. That takes us on the District 1 agenda to manager's report, which I think, Jerry, you usually cover under 4, but if you want to just highlight anything, I know you sent that out today, yesterday, every day's blending together to me. If you have anything to highlight or if anyone has any questions for Jerry.
Yeah, no, I mean, all of the information's in there, especially with all the pool metrics, fitness centers. So yeah, if you have any questions for me, you can reach out and I'll get you answers.
I think one piece, Jerry, I want to kind of touch on is moving forward. I think I brought this up in the past, is having a listing of the enhancements we plan to take on and having that date of what we're taking. So like at year 2, hey, we're now taking on these 2 additional miles. I know we have a map right now, but we don't have any tracking of what we took from what tract and what the like the date that we accepted that item, to my knowledge, correct?
Yeah, that's correct. And we are moving forward with tracking what is coming down the pipeline as far as what is entered initial acceptance and what is scheduled for final acceptance. So we will have that moving forward.
So Jerry, when are you going to deliver the first report on that?
We can probably get that out in the first part of December.
Okay.
Yeah, that'd be helpful to have, Jerry, just a list of scheduled items coming up for all the boards probably, so we can get ahead of them for next year.
Yep.
Okay, any other questions on the district manager's report? Okay, moving on to other business. 9A was from, I don't remember, maybe one of the September study sessions. The boards had asked that I put this on the agenda for the annual meeting, which is design review regulations regarding political signs and flags. I think, Jerry, you had some follow-up items on that from that meeting, so I'm not sure if you have something to report on at this point or if we need to table this.
My recommendation is that we table that, seeing as how we're going to be a little bit before we get back to political signs, and address it at our first meeting in 2021.
Any opposition to leaving this on the agenda for 2021? Great. I will leave this on the agenda. Item 9B, this is something that is also on all the boards' agendas. This is consider approval of your SGA pool representatives. The SGA Special District Property and Liability Pool is who you all contract with to get your insurance. Means you're also a party to their intergovernmental agreement in order to get that insurance. Part of that intergovernmental agreement is a requirement that you designate representatives that can vote on behalf of the district at the annual meeting of the SGA board, and that get notifications on behalf of the districts.
I think, Jennifer, I'd make the same recommendation here that I did previously, that the second representative reference would be our attorney.
Okay.
So that we've got
currently
currently
listed we have
2 different entities.
Yeah. So currently we have Jerry Jacobs as the representative, and Corey from Jerry's office as the alternate member. I'm happy to serve as the alternate member if that is all the board's pleasure. So I would ask District 1 if you would likewise like to make a change to list me as the alternate member representative.
I'm sure you'll do a great job.
The only way I would ask is, would it be, since that is utilizing your time and effort on that versus already being part of our agreed upon task with with Jerry's team. If you do have to alternate in, would that be a billable task under you, or would it just be rolled into our services?
Yeah, it literally takes no time at all, because it's notices that I would already get on your behalf anyway, and we don't participate in the annual meeting usually. So the cost is, I can't imagine a cost. We're spending more legal fees talking about it right now than it will for the rest of the year. How's that?
Okay, then I have no piece on that piece. I definitely want to make sure Timberline is kept up to date, especially Brittany, since she does maintains everything here at the pool with us. That would be my only piece of it, is that Timberline is kept involved with it. So if they do have to come out, that information is rarely available to them. But no, otherwise no issue in there.
All right, so I would take a District 1 motion to approve the member representative form with Jerry listed as your primary member representative and myself listed as your alternate.
So moved.
I have Sam, do I have a second?
I second.
All right, and a District 2 through 5 motion.
I move to have you be the seconder or the alternate.
All right. Great. All in favor collectively, please say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? All right, motions carried. That takes us to the end of District 1's agenda. So I would take a District 1 motion to adjourn.
Before adjournment, I just want to basically bring up once again, I know we've been hard on our consultants today, and in the past, trying to get to this point in time. So Jennifer, Shelby, Jerry, and Brittany, thank you guys so much for dealing with us. Thank you for being that intermediary that works between all of us to get there. Especially Brittany and Jerry, thank you for working with this community to basically be there and answer at our beck and calls, no matter how annoying we are in this group. I know you guys are stuck between a rock and a hard place, so I just want to make sure all the consultants know our appreciation towards you, and know that nothing in this community would not be possible without you guys. Trying to manage this any other way, I think, would be a complete and total nightmare. So thank you guys.
Thank you. Any other comments before I get a motion to adjourn District 1's board meeting? All right, can I get a motion to adjourn District 1's meeting?
All motions, Josh.
I'll second, Jason.
Motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
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 All right, 1 of 5 down. I'm just organizing my various agendas here because I know Bruce is going to ask me to multitask and try to go through them all simultaneously. So back up to approval of minutes. We have different minutes for all the different boards because I like to be difficult, I think. Let's see here. All right, so District 2, we have September 20th. Actually, I think I stand corrected.
I think they're the same. Okay.
I think they're all the same because we had joint study sessions. I was thinking that one of them had a lagging
Right.
approval. There is a lagging approval. So District number 4, we missed a set at some point of July 22nd. So I would take a motion of Districts 2, 3, 4, and 5 to approve September 22nd, October 20th, and October 30th. And then for District 4, that would also include July 22nd, 2020.
So moved.
Second.
All right. All in favor, please say aye.
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 All right. Motion carries. Legal items on all of these districts. Let's see. On Districts 2, 3, and 5, we are yet to approve the intergovernmental agreement with the statewide Internet Portal Authority. That is to set up your websites. So I would take a motion for Districts 2, 3, and 5 to enter into that IGA.
So moved.
Second that.
A motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? All right, motion carries. I am sure that you are all exhausted of having me explain to you the 2021 annual resolutions. We did not take the liberty of inserting your officers into those. And currently you have a bit of a mismatch in your officers because District 4, Kelly is the chairman and Bruce is the chairman of all the other districts. And I should also take this opportunity to note for the record, because I missed it under Directors Matters, that Steve Panter did tender his resignation from District 2's board effective November 9th. So you do have a vacancy on District number 2's board of directors. So what I'd be looking for is a motion to approve the annual resolution and a suggestion for a slate of officers.
So I would suggest that we probably align it with number 4, if that works. And I think that, Kelly, you're president, that's acceptable on your side.
Fine, that's good.
So District 4's officers, just to clarify, that would mean we would have Kelly as president, Brandon as secretary treasurer, and the remaining board members are assistant secretaries. So if that is the board's pleasure, I would take a motion.
Any other thoughts, I guess, in terms of that slate? Is it good? Okay, I'll make a motion.
All right, do a second. Motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? Motion carries. All right. Moving on to 6B or C, depending on which agenda you're on. That is just the informational item from the Gallagher Amendment. Again, happy to answer any questions, but you didn't indicate you had any when we talked about this on the other agenda. So I would pass it back to Shelby for item 7. We have already accepted the financial statements and the auditor engagement letters. We have not approved budgets for districts 2, 3, 4, or 5.
Jennifer, one quick question on the District 4 agenda. We do have additional item under legal matters. Do we need to?
Oh, did I skip one? Thank you for being a double checker here. Yes, thank you. So on the item 4 agenda, we do have considering an amendment to the advance and reimbursement agreement, and I missed that because I don't have an attachment because there isn't one prepared yet. We do have additional capital available to reimburse for improvements that have already been completed and are currently in the process of being certified. So the approval here would be to authorize making that repayment subject to receipt of an independent engineer's cost certification in an amount not to exceed, Shelby.
Oh, I knew you were going to
put you on the spot.
Give me 1 second. I can pull that up.
And the repayment will be made by December 15th pursuant to last year's direction. I'm sorry, Shelby.
No, sorry, I should have.
You should have foresaw my question was coming.
Sorry, everybody.
I can try to bring it up too here. Let's see here. Which one of us wins?
Yep. So it's approximately 32,000. I don't have the exact figure, so maybe we can round up a little bit to account for additional specific ownership taxes that come in through the 15th of December.
Yeah, so I guess not to exceed $35,000 or whatever lesser amount is available from the tax revenues.
Yep.
I'll make that motion.
That was Brandon.
Second.
Do I have a second by Kelly? All in favor, please say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? All right. Now I think I've cleared item 6 on all the agendas and can move back to the budgets for districts 2, 3, 4, and 5.
Great. Any further for District 2 or any of them, any further discussion or comments?
None.
Nope.
If you just want to go through them, we can approve them all together if you want, Shelby, it's fine.
Yeah, I don't think I really have anything further to point out. And so,
Okay.
I'll make that motion to approve the budgets as presented.
All right, so that motion and second is to clarify it's for districts 2, 3, 4, and 5. Okay.
Yes, yes.
Nodding.
And the other, yes.
All right.
And the other items, I guess, to appropriate and certified melody.
Yes, thank you, Brandon. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? All right, motion carries. That concludes the business for districts 2, 3, and 5. So if I could get a motion, well, we could just leave them open. All right, so moving back to District 4. Under other business, we still have approval of your 2021 service contracts. And those are 2 different snow maintenance agreements based on one's clubhouse and one's your other snow maintenance areas. Your landscape maintenance, one for clubhouse, one for common areas, and one for medians. And then ratification of an amendment to your 2020 landscaping agreement. Those are all included in your packet. I'm happy to try to answer any questions or make Jerry and Brittany answer questions. It's just more likely. If there are none, I would take a motion to approve.
I don't have any questions.
All right, hearing no questions.
None here. I'll make a motion.
A motion by Brandon. Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion carries. All right. If anyone else has found something that I've missed, I think I've cleared all the agendas for all 5 districts.
Jennifer, there's actually one final item for District 4. Okay. 7A, the ratification of claims. I just want to make sure that.
Darn it, Shelby. I did skip over something.
So board, this is the claims listing from the July meeting. So this is from July 17th through November 10th. All of these were approved by your accountant and your district manager, totaling $391,835. I would note, just in conjunction with this, that we do anticipate to be within the approved 2020 budget for total expenditures. Any questions on these items?
So I know I'm not on board 4, but one quick question about the CenturyLink. I see it's coming in at between 140, 120. Is there any reason we're paying their additional fees on that side of it versus their 65 that they're doing right now for gig internet service that we're receiving at the clubhouse?
We'll have to look into that, Jason, and get back to you.
Okay.
Yeah, we can follow up on that. Any other questions? And if not, we would ask for a motion to ratify the claims.
So moved.
Second.
A second? Second. All in favor, please say aye.
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 All right, motion carries. Last call and finding things that I've made a mistake on. Any other agenda items I've missed while trying to.
Come on, Shelby.
I can't find anything else.
Come on.
Between the two of us, we're spot on though, Shelby. It's a good team we've got going on here. All right, with that, I thank you all for the marathon meeting and your participation, and wish you all a happy, safe, and healthy Thanksgiving. And I would take a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay. All right, well, thank you, everyone.
Happy
Good evening.
Thanksgiving.
Nice job.
Thanks,
Thank you
everybody.
guys. Happy Thanksgiving.